You choose if you want to start in French or start in English.
Oh, well, I will start in French. Hein?
Ok, bon, très bien. Alors, je vous ai demandé qu'est-ce que vous rappelez de quand la guerre a commencé?
Oui, la guerre a commencé à Belgrade le 6 avril. Il y avait des avions allemands qui sont volés au-dessus de Belgrade. Ils ont jeté des bombes. Et moi, j'ai eu 4 ans et je me suis réveillée tout à coup quand ma grand-mère a essayé de me mettre un soulier et ma maman l'autre soulier. Ils ont dit vite, il faut se lever, il faut partir. Et bon, demi-endormis, nous sommes allés à la cave et là nous sommes restés 2 jours, je crois.
Ah.
Oui, ils avaient tout le temps des bombardements et quelquefois il y avait entre les bombardements, on a pu aller à la maison pour prendre quelque chose à manger, quelques minutes jusqu'à l'autre bombardement a commencé. Et j'étais avec maman et la grand-mère et la bonne. Les autres sont tous partis déjà avant, car on a su que la guerre va commencer à Belgrade. Ils sont partis pour la mer. Et nous sommes restés. Et bon, ma grand-mère, qui était une femme très énergétique, hein, il a dit à maman, il faut que nous partions. Mais comment partir avec un petit enfant, une vieille femme? Et ma grand-mère a dit, tu vas à l'hôpital et tu cherches une voiture, car mon père était chirurgien à l'hôpital et on pensait que maman peut obtenir une voiture. Et bon, maman est allée jusqu'à l'hôpital et c'était bien loin. De Dortschol jusqu'à l'hôpital. Elle a eu bien sûr plus que demi-heure à aller à pied pendant les bombardements. Mais bon, elle a réussi, elle a obtenu une voiture, elle est venue à la maison pour nous chercher. Et jusque nous sommes préparés pour descendre, le chauffeur est parti avec la voiture. Nous sommes descendus, la voiture était partie. Et ma grand-mère a dit, tu vas encore une fois pour chercher une autre voiture. Et maman, qui était obéissante, hein, est allée jusqu'à l'hôpital, elle est venue avec l'autre voiture et nous sommes réussis de partir avec cette autre voiture pour la gare. Mais on n'a pas pu aller à la gare car le pont est tombé. Mais nous sommes allés dans une autre gare qui était pour les animaux. Et bon, avec un fourgon, ça s'appelle cette train qui transporte les animaux. Oui. Avec un fourgon, nous sommes partis et nous sommes venus jusqu'à Split, mais ça a duré quelques jours. Hein. Ah. Nous sommes allés à Herceg-Novi, à Nevesigne, là, nous sommes tous restés là-bas quelques heures et à la fin nous sommes arrivés à Split. À Split, il n'y avait pas la guerre encore, hein, elle n'a pas encore commencé. Et bon, nous avons trouvé un appartement chez les gens de Split Et là, nous sommes restés quelques mois. Et à Belgrade, les Allemands sont venus, Belgrade est tombé et les Allemands sont venus à Belgrade, ils ont occupé Belgrade. Et mon papa, qui était à Novi Sad, ils étaient comme officiers à Novi Sad, est rentré à Belgrade car il n'avait plus d'armée yougoslave. Et bon, il a travaillé dans l'hôpital militaire et maman a essayé de le faire venir à Split. Et ce n'était pas facile, mais elle a essayé de lui envoyer des passeports falsifiés avec un autre nom. Et bon, comme ça, il est réussi de venir à Split comme un marchand de vin. C'était écrit dans son passeport qu'il est un marchand de vin, je ne sais pas comment il s'appelait. Eh bien, il est venu à Split. Et à Split, on a su déjà que les Allemands vont venir là aussi. On a essayé de partir de Split et nous sommes partis pour l'Italie avec un bateau. C'était un bateau qui a transporté beaucoup de Juifs. Il y avait des autres familles juives qui sont tous partis pour l'Italie. Ils nous sont venus à comment s'appelait à Borgo Valditare. C'était un village à la montagne.
Oui.
On faisait des skis, des skis là-bas. C'était un très beau village. C'était la province de Parme.
Parme, ah.
Oui, près de Parme. Et ça s'appelait Borgo Valditare, cette ville. Et là, nous étions internés. Alors, les hommes ont dit aller chaque jour à la police et donner les signes qu'ils sont là. Et nous habitons dans des familles italiennes. Nous avons habité dans une famille qui s'appelle Perazzi. Ils étaient des gens très gentils, ils étaient très gentils avec nous. Ils ont eu des enfants et j'ai joué un peu des enfants, mais pas beaucoup, car maman ne me laissait pas sortir, hein? Elle a eu peur. Hein? Je dis rester toujours à la maison.
Et votre grand-mère était là aussi?
Et ma grand-mère n'était pas plus là, car elle est allée à Opatia. Opatia, ça s'appelait Abbazia. Car les fils de ma grand-mère, les frères de maman, ils sont partis avant nous, avant que les bombardements ont commencé à Belgrade, et ils sont partis pour Abbazia. Et ma grand-mère de Split est allée à Abbazia pour joindre ses fils. Comme ça c'était seulement papa, maman et moi et deux autres familles juives. Il y avait par exemple Loni Davico. Vous avez entendu de Loni Davico. Alors, à cette époque, il avait 15 ans. Il était là avec ses parents et Oscar Davico était là avec sa femme et il a eu un petit fils de 2 ans et il avait plusieurs des familles de Belgrade et des autres villes peut-être aussi à Bogota. Et à Bogota, nous sommes restés une année. Et après, on a dit qu'il y a une possibilité de quitter l'Italie si on trouve un pays qui veut nous recevoir.
C'était l'année 42.
C'était la fin de 42.
Oui.
Alors nous sommes partis la fin de 42 d'Italie. Et bon, Argentine a dit qu'il va nous recevoir et Canada, je ne sais pas, il avait des autres pays qui ont voulu nous recevoir. Et nous sommes partis d'Italie et on nous a donné même l'argent. Ils n'ont pas donné l'argent, mais la possibilité de changer l'argent aux courses normales. Et ça, c'était très très bon. Hein?
Oui.
Et avec cet argent, nous avons pris l'avion pour aller à Argentine. Mais on a dit venir à Madrid.
Oui.
Et à Barcelone, après à Madrid, et là, nous sommes restés quelques mois pour attendre la visa pour Argentine. Mais mon papa a eu des possibilités d'aller à Londres, car les rois, il n'y avait pas de roi, il y avait le jeune qui a seulement 18 ans,
oui.
et tous les ministres, comment on dit, les politiciens, comment on dit, les politiciens hein, de Yougoslavie, ils étaient à Londres.
Oui.
Et la reine Marie, la mère du jeune roi, elle était présidente de Rouge-Croix à Londres, et comme ça, elle a fait venir mon père à Londres. Et comme ça, nous sommes venus, au lieu d'aller à l'Argentine, nous sommes allés à Londres. Et bon, à Londres, il y avait des bombardements, c'était la guerre, c'était le commencement de 1943.
Oui.
Non. Nous sommes quittés l'Italie pour Noël 1942, et nous sommes venus à Londres, c'était déjà peut-être les mois de mars ou avril 1943. Et il y avait des bombardements à Londres, je suis allé à l'école. Bon, c'est allé un peu de temps, mais après on a dû aller au village, car quand on a bombardé Londres tout le temps. Et nous étions dans un village pas loin de Londres quelques mois, après nous sommes rentrés. Je ne voulais pas rester là du tout, car papa il est resté à Londres, hein. Il n'était pas avec nous, et j'ai eu peur que quelque chose peut arriver à papa, ça j'avais su, hein. J'ai déjà 6 ans à cette époque. Nous sommes rentrés à Londres, et bon, nous sommes dormis dans la cave. Nous avons eu des lits dans la cave. C'était une grande maison à Londres, avec beaucoup d'appartements, mais seulement les étrangers sont allés à la cave. Les Anglais, ils sont restés dans les appartements. Ils ont dit, c'est étrangers qui ont toujours peur. Hein?
Oui, c'est comme ici à Belgrade, même chose. En 99, ici à Belgrade, dans les bombardements.
Oui, ils sont restés
Oui,
à Belgrade.
oui. Mais ils ne sont pas allés à la cave, ils sont pas, seulement
oui.
seulement les étrangers sont allés à la cave.
Oui, oui.
Et
Mais à Londres, ils ont bombardé chaque nuit. C'était des V2 et les rockets.
Oui.
C'était dangereux.
Oui, oh oui, vraiment.
La maison près de la nôtre, elle était bombardée et tous les gens sont morts.
Oui, vraiment.
C'était une grande maison. Hein.
Oui.
Juste près de nous.
Oui,
Et nous avons entendu ces bruits quand la bombe est tombée là. C'était vraiment... on a eu peur, hein? J'ai eu peur, mais bon, je me suis habituée, c'est comme ça la vie. Hein? Et à la fin, un beau jour, la fin de la guerre est venue, c'était le V-Day, et les Anglais sont allés à la rue, ils ont chanté V-Day, hein, avec des crackers. C'était très joyeux.
Ah oui.
Ils avaient beaucoup de joie, les gens, tous les Anglais. Et les petites princesses, ils étaient à la guerre aussi avec des uniformes, ils ont servi aussi, ils étaient là, ils ont parlé aux gens, mais ils n'étaient pas si petits, ils avaient peut-être 15 ans, 16 ans, la grande dame, Elisabeth, elle a eu 16 ans, je crois.
Oui.
Oui, elle est justement 10 ans plus âgée que moi, elle a eu 16 ans. Et Margaret a eu peut-être 12 ans, hein, mais tous les deux ont eu des uniformes, ils travaillaient pour la guerre. Et bon, nous sommes restés à Londres encore un peu, car papa a eu le travail d'acheter des instruments pour les hôpitaux à Belgrade. Alors, il a acheté ça a duré quelques mois, et après nous sommes rentrés à 1946 à Belgrade. Et voilà.
Let's do some English now. Okay, let's switch if we can.
We can switch, I will try.
So I want to ask you, when you got you went to Split.
Yes.
And the Italians were there.
They were Italians. They weren't very, very bad. They were the Italians there in Borgotaro. They were very kind.
Right.
Yes.
But I mean, you were in Split, and you arrived in Split, and you went to an hotel. I imagine you stayed in a hotel.
Yes, not all the time. We stayed a whole year in Split. We rented an apartment. Well, 2 rooms in an apartment where the Split people.
So did you have to report to the Italians your presence, or you were just you didn't report anything? You didn't wear a star?
No.
There was no. Were Jews supposed to wear a star in Italian zone?
Well, we never did.
Never did.
I don't know. In Belgrade, people wore a star.
Yes.
But in Split, we didn't have a star. I never saw anyone with.
You never saw it. That's
star.
good. Well, so you came. The war started on April 6th, and you left on the 8th, or a couple of days later.
Couple of days later, we were in one cave and then in another cave, till we managed to go go away. It was perhaps it was the 10th.
Right. Now, did who decided to go to Italy? Did you decide to go to Italy, or did Italians ask you to? How did you go? You were in Split, and you took a boat. You just took a boat and went to Italy.
Well, there was a boat with a lot of people, with Jewish families.
All Jewish families, most.
I think they were all Jewish
Yeah,
families.
and my question
How
is...
do we get to the boat? I can't
No,
tell you.
the question is why? Why? Were you asked, did the Italians say all refugees must go to Italy?
Because we knew that the Germans were coming to Split. We wanted to leave Split.
Oh, was this in 43?
No, that was not 43. That was 42. I suppose
Right.
it must have been the beginning of 42.
Right.
And
So
when we got to Italy in beginning of 42, and we left Italy the end of 42.
right.
We're almost a year in Italy.
Right. Now, I'm trying to figure out if it was you were asked by the authorities to
leave Split.
to go to Italy, or if there were many other Jewish families, it must have been an organized event.
It must have been an organized
Yeah.
event.
And because then, who decided to go to Borgotaro? You said.
Well, we didn't know that we were going to Bogotá. We went with the boat to Italy, and from Italy they brought us by train to Bogotá.
Ah, they sent you. They sent you there. So it was an organized. This
Yes.
was an organized
They sent
departure.
us to Bogotá.
Mm-hmm. And you were. This means that you were never in. You had to report. Your father had to report
Yes,
to
in
the
Bogotá
police.
he had to
to
report
police every
to
day.
the police every day.
Yeah, but not. But you didn't. He reported for you.
Yes, he reported. Only the men
Right.
reported.
So I assume that they knew that your father had been in the army. I assume they knew, because every doctor had to. I assume.
I don't know. There were my father was the only doctor.
Right. How old was your father then?
That was he was born in 1901.
All right.
No. He was born in 1891.
So he was about 50.
He must have been 50, yeah.
Yeah.
And my mother was 10 years younger. She was about 40, 41.
Mm.
He
So
must have been 50.
now, how about your grandmother? Your grandmother now was in Opatia.
My
right?
grandmother was in Opatia,
Opatia
and
was
they were not interned. They were free in Opatia.
Did the Italians know they were Jews?
Abbazia, that was near
Italian.
Trieste, yeah?
Yeah,
Yes.
It was Italian.
It was Italian.
Right.
They lived in a hotel.
Right.
And they were not interned, yeah? They were free.
And what happened to them?
Well, when we left Italy, they went from Opatia to Modena, and they stayed in Modena till the end of the war. Well, my aunt who lived in Belgium, she came to Modena, and my other uncle, he was also in Modena with his family, but he wanted to leave Italy and go to Switzerland, And then he left Italy with his family, his wife and two big children. They were grown up almost. They wanted to go to Switzerland, but they were trapped on the frontier. The Germans had.
This was 43. This was. Yeah.
They have catched them.
Right, but this was 43 already then. This was already 43.
That must have been 43, yes, of
Yes.
course. Huh? And they caught them on the frontier, and they sent them to Auschwitz. My cousin, he was about 20. He was in Auschwitz because some people told us that they were with him in Auschwitz. But what happened to my uncle and his wife and his daughter, we never knew. I suppose perhaps the older people, they shot them at once, I suppose. And what happened with my cousin, the daughter, I don't know if they sent her to Auschwitz. We only heard that the boy was in Auschwitz. And there was a French boy there who was with him, and he wanted to run away from Auschwitz. And he asked him to go together, but my cousin didn't want to go. He said, once I tried to flee, and they caught me, I'll never try again. Huh? And he stayed in Auschwitz and died, I suppose, or they killed him. We never heard anything about him.
And grandmother was in Italy?
Grandmother, she was in Modena all the time with my aunt and her family, they, who came from Belgium.
Uh-huh. Now,
they had the Italian passes.
Oh, I see.
My aunt in Belgium was married with a Jew who had the Italian nationality.
Uh-huh.
And they came from what is called, there was a place where a lot of Jews lived in Greece. I can't remember how the place was called. And they had all Italian nationality. And during the First World War, my aunt, the sister from my mother, she was 18 years old, and she made acquaintance of this Italian Jew who lived there in Greece, and they married, and afterwards they lived in Brussels.
Uh-huh.
And when the war started, when the Germans, when they occupied Brussels and France, and then they came to Modena.
Ah.
And they stayed with my uncle and his family. They went from Modena, they wanted to flee to Switzerland.
Right.
My grandmother, she stayed in Modena. She was already almost 80 years old. Or they would have taken her with them, and she would have lost her life.
Right.
Also, so she stayed in Modena, and the family from Brussels, and they all survived in Modena.
And I guess they had papers. They had fake papers.
They had their Italian passports, and my grandmother. Nobody asked her.
Nobody asked her, of course. But they had Italian passports, but the Italians were supposed to
know that they were Jews.
Well, the Italians
they
knew.
know,
They had to know.
Perhaps they didn't know, I don't
They
know.
had to know. It was because at the time of the racial laws, you had to declare yourself, and there were always somebody
Who told?
who told, and so it was. Since there was no danger, there was no danger really. I don't think that many Jews pretended that they were not Jews because there was no danger. Yeah, there was just discrimination, but not danger. So I doubt.
And in Italy it was dangerous because there
Well,
was Mussolini
in 43,
yes.
but before,
Before.
I'm saying before, there was no reason to hide it. If I had known, that's the reason. There was, I don't think that it was. The only problem is the language. I mean, they didn't speak Italian, and if they spoke, they had an accent, strong accent, so they could be spotted easily. Now,
Well, they talked, they spoke Spanish
oh,
because they were
Sephardic.
Sephardi.
So they spoke Spanish, so they pretended to be Spaniards?
No, when we came to Spain, they told us we should not speak Spanish because the Spanish people will see that we
Right.
are not real
Right.
Spanish people. But I remember when we came to Madrid, my mother went to shops and she talked everywhere Spanish.
Really?
They understood her. And they said she speaks Spanish as the Spain spoke for 500 years. Because when
Right.
they left Spain,
Of course.
that was in 1498, and they spoke that Spanish.
Right.
And in 500 years, the language changed a little bit, but everyone could understand, and they understood everything. And when my aunt, when she married her husband during the First World War, she spoke Serbish, and he didn't speak Serbish, but they spoke Spanish. The language they spoke was Spanish.
Right.
Because they were all separate Jews.
Right. At home, this was a language spoken at home.
My grandmother, she spoke only Spanish at home. She didn't even speak well Serbian.
Really?
She spoke a little bit. My mother and the younger people, they spoke. They went to school.
Right.
But my grandmother, she went. She went in a German kindergarten when she was little, and afterwards she got married and they spoke at home Spanish.
Right.
My grandfather he learned to speak Serbian language when he was 6 years old. At home they only spoke Spanish. When we were 6, he had to learn Serbian to go to school.
Right. That's interesting. That's because, of course, there was no television.
No.
There was no television, and that's how because children in America they always, even though they are foreigners, they learn English from television. And
they played with other Jewish children.
They just, I see. The whole neighborhood
It was a kind of ghetto.
Really?
You know what Doczol is?
Yeah.
Where the more down to the Danube.
Yes.
And there was a ghetto there. A long time ago, when my father was a child, perhaps, and when my grandmother was a child.
Right.
And afterwards, they left the ghetto, and they had homes everywhere where the Jewish Obstina, comment on dit, the Jewish
I know the option.
Obstina, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, they lived in the, near Obstina,
Right.
by Kalimegdan,
Right.
and more down to Docho.
Yes. And there were like in Trieste. I'm from Trieste, and in Trieste there is the ghetto, and it's basically there are stores. They are old antique stores now, and brick and brack stores, odds and ends. But no Jews live there, although it's a very nice neighborhood.
There are no Jews anymore in Trieste.
Right. No, there are, but not in the ghetto.
Not in ghetto.
No, they are wherever they want.
Yes.
Naturally, but they are just the stores. All the Jewish stores are still there. So I guess it was a similar thing here, I imagine. So now, so your grandmother was in Modena, and with whom? With her.
Well, with her son, with one son, and his family.
Right.
And the daughter came from Belgium with her husband and her daughters.
Right.
And the son left Modena,
Yes.
wanted to go to Switzerland, and was caught.
Right. Did your grandmother, and then of course your grandmother came back to Belgrade in 45.
46.
46, yes.
She stayed in Italy till we came from London to
Belgrade. Did she talk about how the decision was made? Who decided to go? Were there arguments about going to Switzerland or not? What did she tell you ever?
She never did that. She was always crying that it was all the fault of the daughter, because the daughter from my uncle, she was 19 years old. She got married just before the war, in the 30th of March in 41. And her husband was taken as prisoner of war, and she didn't want to leave Italy, because they could have gone to America, to Argentina, for instance.
Really?
And she didn't want to go to Argentina. Right. She wanted to stay near home, so that when her husband comes back, that she'll be there. And so they stayed in Italy. And when they decided to leave Italy to go to Switzerland, it was too late. They got caught.
So, and this was the husband who had been prisoner.
No, the husband who had been prisoner, he survived, but we never saw him again. He survived, but his wife, my cousin, she got caught in the Swiss frontier and was killed. Right.
I'm trying to figure out so the grandmother is your grandmother is in Modena with her.
Yes, she stayed with the son and his grown-up children till they left Italy, and with the daughter who came from Brussels. How did she manage to come from Brussels to Modena? I can't tell you.
Well, I guess they took a train.
But they had Italian passes, that I know.
Right.
In Saloniki, my uncle and my aunt, they got acquainted in Saloniki during the First World War. And from Saloniki they went to live in Brussels afterwards. They all spoke Spanish.
So who else? well, obviously, you're being in a doctor's family. There was an advantage, because it's always helpful.
Well, it was helpful.
To, I mean, for getting a visa,
Yes.
in particular.
But
because
if my father didn't get the visa to go to London, we would have gone to Argentina.
Right. I mean, even Argentina might not want you unless you had a certain position, a certain skills. They weren't taking everybody, were they?
Well, some people that we knew went to Argentina. We had a visa for Argentina also, but before the visa came, my father managed to get the visa. He wanted to go to be near home also.
Right.
He wanted to go to London and not go so far away.
Right.
To Argentina.
Right. Of course. Who else in your family? Any other people in your family that you want to mention? Any other cousins or?
I know that my grandmother, the mother for my father, she had 5 sisters, and they all had families, and they all got killed in the Holocaust. They were in Belgrade.
They stayed in Belgrade.
They stayed in Belgrade.
Uh-huh.
And they all lost their lives. And I know my father always said we had so many cousins, there was such a big family, and no one had survived.
Right. Well, I mean, in your immediate family, they seem to have. There was the luck of going to Italy, I guess. That was a way to survive for many people.
We survived, thanks to grandmother, who also sent my mother to get a car, because if we stayed in Belgrade and my father had come from Neustadt to Belgrade, we wouldn't have gone to Italy. My father, he didn't like adventures, but
of course.
But we were in Split, and
so he had to.
He had to come to Split because of us.
Incredible.
But if we all were in Belgrade, we would have stayed.
Right. So it was your grandmother, and how? Why would she think of that?
Well, because her other sons had gone to Italy, not to Italy, to
Opatia.
To Opatia, yeah, and she wanted to go to her other sons, and she was left with my mother because she had a cough. She was ill, and when they went a few days before us, they left Belgrade. They left grandmother with us, and grandmother, even if she coughed, she had a strong will. She wanted to save us.
Well, she didn't know. She didn't know that the Italians were better than the Germans. She could not think of that.
They knew it.
They knew
That it was better to go to Italy, to go to the sea.
Right.
You should always go to the sea.
Yes.
They said.
Of course.
One must leave.
Did she say that?
Yes, I heard it always. They always said, "You have to go to the sea."
How did they say it in Spanish? In Spanish?
No.
Or in Serbian?
In Serbian.
What did they say?
Mora da se ide na more. Prema moru.
Ah.
Prema moru. Tako smo išli u Split, jel? So we came to Split. And the family from my mother, brothers, they went to Opatia. It was better to go to Opatia than to Split. I don't know how they got there, but they were there.
Because Opatia was Italian even before the war, I believe. Or was it only... Was Opatia Yugoslavia or was it Italy?
it was Italy.
Yeah, it was next to Fiume, next to Rijeka.
Yes.
Fiume.
Fiume, Rijeka was Italy also.
Right, of course. Wow. So, do you know the names of the cousins who died here?
Well, my father's aunts, the sisters of from his mother.
Right.
Well, one was called Bucha, I remember, and one was called Irene. She was very beautiful. They said people, when she went to Vienna, people stood, who passed with their, I don't know how they call their, not cars, but with horses.
A carriage.
With carriages.
A carriage.
They stood to look at her. She was so beautiful. That was Irene, and then was one, she was called Mary, one was called Nelly. I don't exactly know which were the aunts and which were the cousins, the names, but Irene was an aunt that I know because they talked about her and her beauty.
Right.
But she was killed also.
Right. Maybe later we'll sit down and make a. Because I like to do also the listing of all the Jewish families, and with the names and any possible reference that we can find, all those in Belgrade. And so this, I would like to ask you later if you can sit down and make a family tree so that we know who is who, and because it's confusing. Obviously, it's confusing to think about such a big family.
Yes, of course.
And when did you find out that? When did your grandmother or your father or your mother, when did they find out that the Jews were being killed?
Well, when we were in London and the war was over, then they sent a telegram to Switzerland. They had an acquaintance there and asked if my uncle had arrived. And the answer was they did not arrive, they stayed in Italy. And I remember my mother cried 2 days when she got this letter that her brother and his family, that they stayed in Italy, they didn't arrive in Switzerland. Then we knew that they had been caught.
Yeah, but I wonder when was it? Because I know that we were, in my family, we had my great grandmother married a Christian in Metkovic, and she was Jewish, and her family was Jewish, and they hid in grandmother's and grandfather's house in Trieste, but they didn't know that the Jews were being killed. They had no idea. No one had any idea until after the war. What about your family? Did they think?
Well, we knew that Jews in Poland were being killed.
When did they find? You didn't know, of course, you were too small. But when did your father know?
Well, they heard about it, and that's why they went they wanted to leave Belgrade and go to the sea.
Oh, I see. So this means that it was known already. They were not being killed. They were being ghettoized at first. I mean.
Well, they knew that terrible things were happening with people in Poland and in Austria.
Right.
And there were people from Austria and Poland who managed to come to Belgrade. There was
I see.
and they told us what terrible things were happening. That exactly that they were being killed. I don't know if they knew that.
Right,
Perhaps they didn't know, but
Right, exactly. They I mean, if they weren't killed, even if they weren't killed, they would die in those conditions. If there is no food and no heat, people die in cold weather and in warm weather. So it was a good conclusion.
I know that people were saying, who had little children, I don't want Hitler to kill my children. And so they did. They knew that Hitler was killing, was going to kill.
Was going to kill, yeah. Right.
I even remember it when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
I heard that Hitler was going to kill
Really?
Jewish kids. I didn't know there were any Jews. I found out afterwards that we were Jews.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know, but I knew that Hitler was killing children, or was going to kill. People were afraid of that.
So people were talking about it already.
Yes.
Already in 41 about it.
In 41, yes. And the family from my mother, they all went a few days before the 6th of April. They packed luggages, they went away. And we didn't, because we went to the station and we wanted to leave Belgrade also. But they said there was no train that day.
Uh-huh.
So we returned.
Oh, really?
Home. We returned home. That was before the 6th of April. And grandmother was ill. And my mother said, well, when we didn't get away today, we're not going. And she unpacked. and after a day or two, it was the 6th of April.
Right. I see. Oh well, and after the war, you came back here in 46, and your father was back in the hospital.
He was back in the hospital, and at the university, and he was a surgeon, and
he was a professor also.
He was a professor.
And there was he had been in London, so was there any problems about that with UDBA or?
It was not very good because the king was in London and the Queen Mary.
Right.
And but they didn't make problems.
No, obviously, if he came back and was a professor, it was okay.
Yes. They didn't say anything. I remember when we were in London, we were invited to the marriage of King Peter. The young King Peter, he married a Greek princess.
Right.
He was about 21, he was very young. And his mother, Queen Mary, she didn't consent.
Really?
No, she was against the marriage because she knew that was during the war. She said, what will the people say, the king's getting married while there is war, while the people are at war. She didn't want it, and she didn't go to the marriage.
Oh, really? So it was a love marriage. It was love.
Oh, it was love, I don't know, huh?
Well, it wasn't arranged. If otherwise it was arranged. If it had been...
No,
it wasn't arranged.
The Queen Mary was against the marriage.
Well,
she didn't go to the marriage.
Then it had to be love.
I suppose
otherwise, they wouldn't. Yeah. Well.
And afterwards they got a son, and we had an invitation to go to the christening of the son. It was a beautiful invitation, a big white one. And when we left London, my father didn't want to take the invitation with us. He tore it and left it in London. And I was so sorry because it was such a beautiful invitation. I wanted to take.
He was worried about being connected to the family.
I suppose he said no, that's not going.
Yeah, yeah. They look in the bags and they looked a lot. Oh
yes, they looked everywhere when we came. They took everything we had brought, and afterwards they gave it back to us.
Oh, they kept everything for a while and went through everything? Uh-huh.
Yes, all that we had. They bought me a bicycle when we went back to Belgrade, and they took the bicycle.
Bicycle?
Yes, a little bicycle. Oh, it was about 9 years old.
Right.
They took the bicycle, but they gave us that. They returned the.
They gave it back.
They gave it back. No, about half a year. They.
Half a year.
It took about half a year till we got the things back.
Ay, ay, ay. That's bad bureaucracy.
I didn't like Belgrade at all when we came. They took my bicycle.
Yeah.
Then I didn't know to speak Serbian properly. I could speak, so I spoke with my mother and father, yeah? But I couldn't write Cyrillic, and it was very difficult. And we came in May '46, and I had to go to school in September. Until September I had to pass an examination that I finished the junior school, and that was difficult. I had to learn Cyrillic, I had to learn all the offensives, the 7 offensives.
Yeah.
I had to know a lot of poems by heart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the big ones, the Narodne pesmi.
Yeah.
For 3-4 pages.
Ay, ay, ay.
They made me learn that all by heart. And I was 9 years old. And my mother just smacked me because I didn't want to learn.
Yeah.
I had to sit and learn. And once I stood up and run away. So she couldn't. But she caught me. I had to go on learning. And I managed till September to pass the junior school examination and go to gymnasium.
How many years was the elementary school? How many years was it?
Well, I was almost 10 when I finished elementary school.
And this was how many years? Was
4 years.
4, I see.
But I didn't go, the first 3 years I didn't go to school at all.
Right.
The last 2 years I went, or the last 3 years I went in London to school.
Right.
But school was much easier in London than in Belgrade.
Really?
We had to learn all the poems, all the offensives, and in London we learned a little bit of history, tales.
Right.
It was quite easy, and the children were younger. They went to school with 4 years.
Right.
And I was, well, I would have been 6 years if I started school at that time, and they started school with 4. They were younger. They finished the junior school with 8, and I with almost 10.
Right, right, right. Now, so at home, you spoke Ladino or?
No, we spoke Serbian.
Serbian, I see. But you say your Serbian was not so good.
The Serbian in England, because my mother spoke English with me. I had to learn English to go to school there. Yeah.
I see. So you kind of forgot Serbian. You were not used.
We spoke Serbian. My father and mother spoke all Serbian, but my mother spoke always English with me, so that.
So you would learn.
I had to learn English to go to school.
Of course.
When I went to school, I was already in the first class, and I couldn't speak English. I couldn't write. I had to learn it all, and my mother didn't speak English either. But she learned English and
to teach you
and spoke English with me.